Anyway, my name is Mark Wardecker. I'm a visiting reference librarian here at the University of Illinois and visiting adjunct professor of library administration. I just got here in January. I came from Dickinson College, where I was the digital services librarian for several years. Digital has changed the entire sort of landscape of libraries. It's changed our entire sort of ecology. You know, whereas we used to sort of work in very much in a physical space with physical resources, and that the notion was that the patrons would first come to the library when doing research and practically do all of their research within that sort of confined physical space. That doesn't happen anymore. I think more and more libraries are trying to come to grips with that. And I think it's very difficult for them to do that because it does entail a very radical change of mindset. We might be better to look at ways of structuring our services which adapt more to the way the internet is. I don't want to say structured because it's a very loose structure, but going from something that is very carefully structured to something that is a bit more rhizomic. Build things out to build a particular tool or database that could be used for something that pertains to a particular scholar's needs. And I'm thinking in terms of things, there's some great projects out there. Before I get to tutorial sharing, I was just speaking in a meeting with some people. We were talking about knowledge bases and the idea that actually data mining reference encounters, whether they be you know, at a reference desk, over the phone, email, chat, but actually taking common questions that might come up and then sort of creating a repository, a database with the questions and the answers so that you can just enter the query and it will actually see if anybody's asked the question before and return an answer. Heavily taught things, the things that come up frequently. It makes sense to generate online tutorials for those sorts of things. And actually ANTS is interesting because it's sort of a huge, you know, clearinghouse for tutorials. They have their own database, which I think is built on DSpace. So if somebody submits a particular web tutorial, they can upload it into their own, they will host it themselves, but they also automatically will upload to a service SlideShare. But it also simultaneously uploads to Blip TV, which is an online video sharing service, which then automatically will syndicate to other video services like YouTube and iTunes and that sort of thing. So you have all of these librarians creating tutorials, and they're providing, you know, actual real metadata for them, so to make them easily findable and that sort of thing, and they're getting distributed all across the web. And again, a very different way of working because you're not curating one collection in one single spot. You're actually building something and then, you know, sort of, you know, taking a shotgun approach and just firing it out across the web in all these different places, which I find really interesting. There's another tutorial site, Primo, is another repository for tutorials, and I think they will take pretty much almost anything as long as it's openly accessible. But I kind of like the ANTS model just because of the idea that they syndicate to all these different sites simultaneously. It's kind of good. I find it to be very useful if you can create a discrete collection of resources that someone can do to fulfill a particular, to complete a particular job. So if you, and if you can do it collaboratively, that's even better. And I think LibGuides are good because they are just, again, distributed sort of widely. They exist online, they have to. You subscribe to it, you contribute, and it just adds to this huge pool. But I don't want to get tied down to one particular platform. There are a lot of different ways to make research guides. When I was at Dickinson, we used MediaWiki, and the idea being that the librarian could start to create a research guide and then could call upon faculty. And I mean, usually I would do that anyway just to get suggestions from them, but if you have a particularly adventurous faculty member, you could give that faculty member the actual credentials to go in and edit the wiki as well. The idea, again, that you can build these little objects, and then you can either let them live on their own, or you can gather them together in one place, or you can share them with other people, is incredibly powerful. I mean, the idea, a simple example, like you said, would be the chat widget here at the University of Illinois. Anybody who's working on a research guide, anybody who's putting together a collection, can grab the code for that and drop it onto their pages, which then basically encourages people to ask questions, driving more traffic to the site, and also getting help to people at the point of need, so that when somebody is actually wrestling with a particular resource or something like that, there's a little box right in front of them directing them to go ahead and prompting them to go ahead and ask the question that they have.
It's a type of outreach.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's done, again, done in a virtual environment. It's hard to talk about because there's so many services which do this sort of thing, and they work with so many different kinds of media, you know, text, video, audio, what have you. But you have all of this media that is easily embeddable. So when creating research guides, it's often useful to look and see if there are other things that might be of use to the researcher beyond just textual resources. And I'm not saying you can't put links to books in your catalog in your research guides. I mean, there are things that exist only in the print world, but there are things that exist outside of it that are also useful as well. For years and years, the idea, you know, was that you needed, you know, that the physical space was important, that you were sort of a symbol of the actual learning that goes on campus. So there's a whole complex of things that go along with that. And when you're administering something like that, you know, space is power, that it could be a good thing to create resources with to donate, to take staff time and apply it to these sort of collaborative projects, that it's not a waste of time to do it. Maybe we need to give up time and money, take it away from some of the more traditional things that we do, and start investing in new ways of delivering services and things like that. And I think it is difficult because we are at a transitional point. Everybody is. And you do have people who have been involved with libraries for a very long time that are very used to doing things in a very traditional manner and that are not comfortable with changing. And we don't really have time to wait until a new generation, you know, rises up through the ranks. Yeah, librarians are going to have to be very agile, they're going to have to be very nimble, and they're going to have to be able to turn on a dime. There's no way librarians can avoid dealing with technology, and there's no way they can avoid interacting with it at a very deep level. I think we need to be training them on how to code. I think we need to be teaching them how to build things online. But still, there is still a place for libraries. There is still a need for people to look at all of this incredible wealth of resources that's now available, and to pick out things and to organize them and get them into some kind of usable working format for others to consume, you know, for other researchers to look at, and building new things that might be incredibly useful. That person will still have a place. It may not be one physical place or building, but there will still be a place.